June is the month that separates gardeners who end up with overflowing baskets of tomatoes from those who spend the rest of summer wondering what went wrong. Everything about June puts your tomato plants under pressure at once. The heat is climbing, the UV index is spiking, and the plants are right in the middle of their most critical biological transition, shifting from leafy vegetative growth into flower and fruit production. And the mistakes gardeners make during this exact window do not just cost you a few tomatoes, they can collapse an entire season in a matter of weeks. I know this because I have made every single one of these mistakes myself. Some of them I made for 2 or 3 seasons in a row, absolutely convinced I was doing the right thing, watching my plants decline and quietly blaming it on the heat or the rain or bad luck. But the heat was not the problem. The rain was not the problem. I was the problem. And today I am going to walk you through the 5 June-specific mistakes that, once I finally stopped making them, completely changed what my tomato garden looked like by August. If you implement even 2 or 3 of these changes this month, you will see a measurable difference before July ever arrives. So let us get straight into it. Top 1, watering your tomatoes at the wrong time of day. This is the #1 June mistake, and it is happening in back gardens everywhere right now as you are watching this video. Most gardeners water when it is convenient for them, in the evening after work or midday when they happen to notice the soil looks a little dry. And in April and May, that approach is forgiving enough because the temperatures are still moderate. But in June, the timing of your watering becomes critical, and getting it wrong creates a chain reaction of problems that most people never connect back to when they turn the hose on. Here is what happens when you water in the evening. The water sits in the soil and on the foliage overnight in cooler, humid, still conditions with zero evaporation. That surface moisture creates the perfect breeding environment for the 3 fungal diseases that destroy more home tomato gardens than anything else: early blight, septoria leaf spot, and downy mildew. These are the diseases that turn your healthy green plant into a yellow spotted disaster by midsummer. You will walk outside one morning and see the bottom third of your plant covered in brown spots and yellowing leaves and think it appeared overnight. It did not appear overnight. You created it 2 weeks ago every time you watered at 7 p.m. But evening watering is not your only enemy. Midday watering in June heat carries its own specific challenges. When water is applied overhead during the hottest part of the day, a significant portion evaporates before it ever reaches the root zone where the plant actually needs it. And when foliage is repeatedly wetted, especially in dense tomato canopies with limited airflow, you increase the likelihood of fungal and bacterial diseases taking hold. The problem is not the water itself. The problem is moisture sitting on leaves longer than necessary. Over time, that creates conditions that favor disease development and can quietly undermine plant health long before obvious symptoms appear. The fix is one of the simplest and cheapest in all of gardening: water early. Your target window is between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. The soil absorbs moisture before peak heat arrives, so you lose far less to evaporation. The foliage dries off quickly as morning temperatures climb, and your plants enter the hottest and most stressful part of the day, already fully hydrated and ready to handle it. That single shift, changing when you water, not how much, will meaningfully reduce disease pressure across your entire June and July garden. Top 2, skipping mulch or mulching the wrong way. Ask 10 gardeners whether they mulch their tomatoes, and roughly 6 of them will say yes. Ask those same 6 whether they are mulching correctly, and almost none of them are. Mulching in June is not optional. It is one of the single highest leverage actions you can take for your tomato plants this month. But there is a specific method that most people get completely backwards, and it ends up causing more harm than skipping it altogether. The mistake is placing mulch directly against the tomato stem. Gardeners heap straw, wood chips, or shredded leaves in a thick, dense ring right up to the base of the plant, thinking that more coverage equals more protection. What they are actually doing is trapping moisture directly against the stem tissue and creating the ideal environment for cholera, rot, and soil-borne fungal infections right at the most critical and vulnerable point of the entire plant. Here is what the research on soil temperature actually shows us. Bare, unmulched soil in direct June sun can reach between 130 degrees and 140 degrees Fahrenheit right at the surface. At those temperatures, the beneficial mycorrhizal fungi living in your soil, the organisms that extend your plant's effective root reach by up to 10 times and allow it to absorb water and phosphorus far beyond what roots could do alone, begin dying. You cannot fertilize your way or water your way past that level of root zone destruction. The biological system collapses silently underground while your plant looks stressed above ground, and you cannot figure out why. 2 to 3 inches of organic mulch can keep that same soil surface 21 to 30 degree and cooler, preserving the living biology your plant depends on. Here is the exact method. Apply your mulch in a 2-inch deep ring, but start 2 inches away from the main stem and spread outwards to the edge of the drip line. That intentional gap at the stem prevents moisture accumulation against the bark. Straw is ideal. Shredded leaves work well. Avoid piling fresh wood chips directly around tomatoes. They break down slowly and temporarily pull nitrogen out of the soil as they decompose, working against your feeding schedule. Before we get into the next mistake, and this one right here is the one that costs gardeners the most fruit, so you do not want to miss it, I want to take a quick second and ask you something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you're watching this from. Seriously, just your city or your country is enough. Because here is why that actually matters. The 5 mistakes in this video affect gardeners differently depending on your climate. A gardener in Texas is dealing with a completely different June than someone growing tomatoes in the UK or Canada or Nigeria or Australia. And when I know where you all are watching from, I can make better, more specific videos for your exact growing conditions. So scroll down, leave a comment right now. Where are you watching from and what is your biggest tomato challenge this June? I read every single one. Top 3, feeding the wrong nutrients at the wrong stage. All right, let us get into mistake number 3 because this one surprises even experienced gardeners every single year. In early spring, nitrogen is your best friend. It drives the vegetative, leafy growth that builds the plant structure your tomatoes need to eventually support heavy fruit. Most gardeners understand this and feed accordingly. But here is the mistake that catches even experienced growers every single June. They keep feeding nitrogen at the same rate and with the same product they used in April and May. And then they stand in their garden confused, staring at lush, gorgeous, dark green plants that are producing almost no tomatoes. By June, your tomato plant is undergoing a fundamental biological transition. It is shifting from vegetative mode into reproductive mode. It wants to flower. It wants to set fruit. That transition requires a complete nutrient pivot. Phosphorus becomes the dominant driver now. It powers root development, fuels flower formation, and facilitates the energy transfer the plant needs to push fruit to maturity. Potassium becomes equally critical, regulating water movement through the plant tissue and building the cell wall strength that resists both heat stress and disease pressure. When you continue pushing nitrogen through June, you are chemically signaling the plant to keep producing leaves rather than flowers. The plant is not malfunctioning. It is responding perfectly to the input you are giving it. The fix is to make the switch to a lower nitrogen, higher phosphorus and potassium formulation by the first week of June at the latest. Look for something in a 5-10-10 or 3-15-15 NPK ratio. Many dedicated tomato fertilizers are already calibrated for the flowering and fruiting phase. Pair that with a weekly liquid application of kelp or seaweed extract, roughly 1 tablespoon per gallon of water applied as a root drench. Kelp delivers natural cytokinins and auxins, plant hormones that specifically support flower development and retention on the vine. This combination of the right granular ratio plus weekly kelp is one of the most reliable tools you have for maximizing tomato production through the summer months. Top 4, accepting blossom drop without understanding it. Nothing is more demoralizing than watching your tomato plant finally load up with clusters of bright yellow flowers, and then watching those flowers go limp, turn brown, and drop one by one to the ground without a single fruit setting. This is blossom drop, and in June, it is one of the most common events in the entire tomato garden. The mistake most gardeners make is one of 2 extremes. Either they panic and start cutting, spraying, or over-fertilizing, trying to fix something they do not understand. or they accept it as an inevitable consequence of the heat and do absolutely nothing. Both responses are wrong because blossom drop in June almost always has a specific, identifiable cause. And once you know the three primary causes, you can address each one directly. The first cause is temperature stress. When daytime temperatures consistently push above 90 degrees and nighttime temperatures stay above 70 degrees, tomato pollen loses its viability. The flower opens on schedule, the pollen is effectively sterile, and the plant aborts the blossom rather than wasting resources on a fruit that will never form. The second cause is inconsistent soil moisture. When a tomato plant swings between drought stress and sudden heavy watering, it triggers a hormonal stress response that causes it to shed developing flowers as a survival mechanism. The third cause is insufficient pollinator activity. In gardens with low bee traffic, flowers on large fruited varieties can open and close through their full cycle without ever being successfully pollinated. Here is the layered strategy for each cause. Use shade cloth, which I will cover next, to buffer the extremes of peak afternoon heat. Maintain consistent, even soil moisture through your mulching and your morning watering routine. And, for pollination, take 30 seconds every morning to gently shake your tomato cages or lightly tap the flower clusters with your hand. This mimics the vibration frequency of a bee's wings, which is what actually dislodges pollen in the wild. For large fruited heritage varieties, hold a small electric toothbrush against the main stem just below a flower cluster for 3 seconds. It sounds almost too simple, but it works. And the difference in fruit set between a garden where you do this and one where you do not is not subtle. Top 5. Treating June sun. The same way you treated May sun, every plant tag, every seed catalog, every beginner gardening article ever written tells you the same thing. Tomatoes need full sun, 6 to 8 hours minimum. Plant them in the sunniest spot in your garden. And from March to May, that advice is exactly right. Your plants need maximum solar energy during establishment to build root depth, develop canopy structure, and store the energy reserves they need to push heavy fruit loads. Full sun in spring is exactly what a tomato plant needs. But here's the part that almost nobody in the gardening world talks about openly. That same full sun in June and July is a fundamentally different thing from what it was in April. The UV index in June is often 2 to 3 times higher than it was in early spring. The angle of the sun has changed, the duration of peak intensity has lengthened, and the plant's needs have shifted dramatically. What happens when a tomato plant is pushed past its UV tolerance threshold is not immediately visible. The leaves do not scorch. The plant does not wilt dramatically the way it does in a drought. Instead, it quietly begins diverting energy away from growth and fruit production and into manufacturing protective compounds to counter the radiation stress. At the same time, that chronic stress suppresses the plant's natural immune defenses. Disease organisms that the plant's biology would normally resist gain a foothold. And the specific stress hormones the plant releases are chemically similar to the signals produced during insect feeding damage, essentially broadcasting a distress call to every aphid, spider mite, and whitefly operating in your garden. In hotter growing regions, a 30 to 40% shade cloth installed horizontally above your garden bed can make a dramatic difference once summer heat intensifies. Not draped over the sides, but above, filtering the light that comes straight down during peak UV hours, typically between 11 a.m. and 4:01 p.m. That level of coverage reduces the most damaging radiation while maintaining full airflow and still delivering the light your plants need for photosynthesis. In high humidity growing regions, this single addition has been documented to extend productive, healthy plant life by 6 to 8 weeks compared to unprotected plants growing in identical soil under identical care. Gardeners in the desert Southwest may need 50 or even 60% coverage. Those in more temperate northern climates may not need it until July. Know your climate and adjust accordingly. But for the majority of tomato growers across warm, sunny growing regions, 40% shade cloth installed in early June is one of the most high-return decisions you will make in your garden this entire season. Those are the 5 mistakes that will define whether your tomato garden produces the kind of harvest that has you giving bags of tomatoes to neighbors, or the kind of garden that looks exhausted and struggling by the time July arrives. Water in the morning between 6 and 9 mas. Mulch correctly with that intentional gap at the stem. Switch your fertilizer to a flowering and fruiting formula immediately. Take blossom drop seriously and attack its specific root causes. And get your shade cloth up before the June sun starts working against you. Every single one of these adjustments is something you can do this weekend. No special equipment, no expensive products, just the right information applied at exactly the right time in the season. That is genuinely all that separates a great tomato harvest from a disappointing one. Get out there, make the changes, and enjoy the best June your tomato garden has ever had. If these tips help you secure a massive harvest this year, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are digging deep into the science of gardening that others often ignore. Let's cultivate a better future together. The next garden treasure will be revealed very soon.